This episode of the Children's Literature Podcast is brought to you by 200 episodes.
Yay! To celebrate 200 episodes, we got bubbly, as in peach bubbly water from the co-op.
Fancy.
The dioxide.
Oh, for a second I was afraid that was going to explode.
Oh, man.
Glug, 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 glug. Oh,
You're doing it too fast.
I'm not very good at this, obviously.
I'm very good at it.
Well, okay, well, good for you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
For our big episodes, we do Ask Me Anything. But for once, we have a question for you. What are your kids reading in the fall?
I can start off with that, which is, Chloe, what are you going to be reading in the fall?
The Hunger Games.
I laughed so hard. So Chloe's going into secondary school here in England, or junior high as it's known in America. And as longtime listeners of the show will know, she's been obsessed with the Hunger Games for a while. That's a correct word? Obsessed, yes.
I think I'm a little over-obsessed.
Yeah. Like, she is deep in the lore.
Me and
Let
my
me
friends
tell you.
play it.
Yes, like they'll set up a cornucopia in the backyard. They know everything about every documented Hunger Games. And so I laughed so hard because we found out that in English class this fall, Chloe's going to be reading the Hunger Games. Like, she's going to get an A so hard without even trying. So, but we're also curious to know from the rest of you, if you have kids in school, what are they going to be reading this fall? Let us know. It might be some interesting stuff, and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. For our next question, whenever I do a fireside fairy tale, I always try to encourage people tuning into the show to tell me what fairy tales they might want to hear told by the fire as I toast with a marshmallow. And I've had a couple of really good suggestions. The 4 that came up most recently were Rapunzel, which was originally a Brothers Grimm tale. And I actually would really like to do that one because there are major differences between the first and second editions. Yeah.
She's not a princess at all. Not
a princess. Another one that was suggested to me was called Vasilisa the Fair. I guess it's a Russian folktale.
I think I've never heard of that one.
I'd never heard of it either. I've looked into it a little bit and it looks interesting. So I'll definitely be doing that one in the future. Someone suggested something from the 1001 Arabian Nights, and there's a lot of fun stories in there. Obviously, the most famous one is Aladdin. And then another suggestion that I'd gotten was The Pied Piper of Hamelin, which is a fun story about lousy parents and a creep who comes into town and steals children. So that seems like a fun, creepy fairy tale to tell by the fire. What do you think?
All I know about a Pied Piper is that I play a music piece on the piano that's named after it. But I have no idea what a Pied Piper is.
Oh, well then I look forward to that. So one thing that is fun to let you all know about how I do the Fireside Fairy Tales is most of the Fireside Fairy Tales, with the exception of the recent one that was the original Jack and the Beanstalk, I always read them to my kids first. So usually what we'll do is, while it's still evening, we'll have dinner, we'll toast marshmallows, we'll sing some songs, and then I test out the stories on my kids. And if they like them, then I go, okay, this is good enough to share with everyone else as a fireside fairy tale, unless there's some kind of more, adult content, less good for kids, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that'll be fun for you because I don't think you've ever heard the Pied Piper of Hamelin before at all. Ooh, so look forward to that one.
All I know is about Peter Piper and the pickled
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, how many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? Ooh, I almost spilled that one. Okay. Our next question comes in from Beth Mitchum, who is a longtime listener of the show. And thank you, Beth, for all of your support. And I've had several very fun interactions with you online. So I wanted to share a message that you sent in a little while ago, which was in response to my criticism of Netflix's reboot of Little House on the Prairie. I'm not looking forward to that. I don't think you've read any of these books.
I have.
Oh,
At
have
school, they have the whole series.
Oh, really?
They're really good books. I've only read the first chapter.
Oh,
But
I'm really surprised because those are a very American book series, and a lot of really American books don't end up in British schools.
Every time you look inside the cupboard, one of the first things you see is Little House on the Prairie.
Huh. I never would have guessed. No, it's funny because...
you can't really walk into it anymore because none of your kids go to it.
I say you're not at that school anymore. Yeah. You're going to junior high. But no, so a lot of American books, British kids have not heard of the Ramona series, and I know that most British kids hadn't heard of the Little House series, so I'm actually surprised to hear that was in your school. I'm pleased.
It's inside the
year
fun 5
books.
and year 6, or the grade 4 and grade 5.
Okay, well, there you go. Anyway, so Netflix is going to be doing a new TV series of Little House on the Prairie.
That's not going to play well.
No, I predicted that they'll completely screw it up. They will not accurately represent the society or politics of the time, which is actually sort of the chicken choice. I think it would be much braver to show things as messy as they really were. But anyway, Beth had this to say. I thought you might be interested to know that the Little House books were carefully curated by Laura's daughter Rose, who often made changes so that the books would more closely represent her ideas. So the original books are not safe islands pure of politics, but actively strive to push Rose's ideas of limited government and anti-communitarian independence. So bits that discuss government help or seem too socialist got rewritten to fit her views. And I am so grateful that she wrote in to say this because this is totally true. So when the Little House on the Prairie series was written, they were edited by her daughter at a time in the 1930s-ish when, there was a lot of fears about communism and rah-rah America for totally understandable reasons. I mean, World War II is about to happen. So I understand the political reasons behind it, but you are getting this sort of 1930s view of what life was like on the plains. And so it's not actually a historically accurate presentation of what happened at the time, but sort of filtered through the politics of the time. But I still think that the books are interesting for exactly this reason. If you want to understand the politics that were going on around World War II, then the Little House series is actually a really good idea to read because then you can get the idea of how Americans wanted to view themselves in contrast with the growing forces of communism that were all around the world and very much a threat, even though those differences were temporarily set aside to fight the Axis powers. People still had it in their mind that the Cold War was coming, and they were completely right. So thank you very much, Beth. I think your comment was totally spot on, and I would love when this TV series comes out to talk more about these books and the way that the original author tried to depict what went on in her own childhood, but then the way that experience was kind of filtered through the politics of her daughter's time, because that's all super interesting and teaches us a lot about U.S. history.
Our next question comes in from Glenn Darcy, who asks, do you have any suggestions for good poetry books to read to young kids? I remember my mother read Robert Frost to me at bedtime when I was young. My favorite was The Egg and the Machine, and it really wanted to make me throw an egg at a train. Okay, so I didn't understand the deeper meaning at the age from 6 to 10, but still it stuck with me. Any other suggestions of poets?
I wrote back to Glenn to say that he should check out Shel Silverstein. A lot of people only remember Shel Silverstein for the book The Giving Tree, which I'm actually not that big of a fan of. But as a kid, I grew up reading Where the Sidewalk Ends and A Light in the Attic because the poems and the pictures are so weird and so funny and so goofy, and I absolutely just love them. Are there any poems that you know of that you would want to recommend to kids?
Yes. Only kids from, I'd say 8 and up would understand this, but the Jabberwocky, we reviewed it for English class, and I really loved doing it, and we had to write our own poem, and mine was called The Gerald Began. It was a cross between a giraffe, I think a hawk and a dragon. Did I just say dragon?
Yeah, dragon.
Giraffe, hawk, and dragon. So
nice. I haven't read this one.
I'll dig it out of my old school books.
Nice. Okay. Well,
have them?
Somewhere.
No.
It's the end of summer. Who knows where any school stuff is? But yeah, no, I would like to read that. I'm also a huge fan of nonsense poetry. So yeah, Jabberwocky. That's another really good suggestion.
I made up too many nonsense words.
This next one is a more general response to a question I've been asked many, many times, which is, will you feature my book on your podcast? And the answer to that is maybe, but probably not. And let me explain why. It's not due to being snobby. It's not due to, like, I don't know, wanting to be mean to anyone. But, okay, I'm going to be honest, but please take this very kindly. My intention is not to hurt anyone's feelings. So most of the emails I get asking, will you feature my book on your show, are from books that are just not appropriate for the podcast for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that I get a lot of emails from people who have sent in books that aren't children's literature. So just the topic alone means, like, it's just not the right thing for the show. Like, if you've written a parenting book or a self-help book or something like that, that's great. But I don't know anything about that stuff. I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm not going to bring a book on my show that's, like, outside the topic of the show and that I can't even ask interesting questions about because it's not my area of expertise. And then I would say most of the emails that I get come in from people who are self-published authors or aspiring authors, and the books just aren't ready yet, or you're marketing the book wrong. Like, I would say the most common email I get from authors who want to be on the show say, I've written a children's book and it's about the value of, and then there's some like generic value like friendship or kindness or tolerance or inclusion. Why do you need to
learn about that when you've already got it in your life?
Well, that's, actually I've never discussed this with Chloe, but that's kind of exactly it. So sometimes people will write an email saying that their book is about a value that's kind of generic and pretty obvious. And the thing is, it's not that things like friendship or tolerance or kindness or inclusion are bad. It's just that those things are not a plot. They're also not character traits. And so on the occasions when I have reviewed the books that say, this is about the importance of friendship, or this is about the importance of inclusion, the stories, they're a value story. They're not a story, right? Like they're trying to teach a value in the same way that, say, like a lesson at church would or something like that, but they don't actually have a plot. Now, I don't want to say this to discourage any aspiring authors. Please keep writing. I absolutely want people to keep writing, and I absolutely want people to keep self-publishing. But if you are an aspiring author and you are sending out emails to, say, publishing companies or people like me, when you describe your book, please describe it in terms of who does interesting things and what actually happens. If you describe your book in terms of it has a generic value, that's not really very interesting. That's not actually literature. That's just like trying to teach kids a moral lesson, which is fine. But again, that's not literature. I can't even talk about it because I won't have anything to talk about. So I'm not being mean. I'm not being picky. I'm not being unkind to any of you. I just want to encourage you to maybe think about the stories you've written and really consider if whether or not you remembered to include a plot. Because if you're just trying to teach a moral lesson, that's fine, but that's a different genre from literature, and kids are not very likely to engage with a book that's just like telling them to do something that's already pretty obvious. What's our next question?
James Mason asked where you can find the saucy versions of fairy tales, as in the oldest ones that haven't been put through Victorian censorship machine. or subjected to the meddling of editors and publishing houses?
Okay, so when I do a fireside fairy tale, what I do first is I just go online and I do a search to find out what the publication history is of a folktale. And I try to find like a university website or some kind of like folklore organization. And then I find out when was the first documented instance of this fairy tale. And then what I try to do is find a scan of the original document. Now, sometimes this is in a language other than English, and I feel comfortable translating in German and Danish and Norwegian and Middle English. I feel like I have a handle on all of those languages.
That's a lot of languages.
Yeah, well, I mean, not they're all closely related, so it's really not that impressive.
All I know is half of Spanish and some French.
Well, good for you. Well, so, I have enough of a knowledge of French that I feel like if I got some help, I could do a French translation. Like, I've been working on some Charles Perrault that I feel comfortable with. But yeah, so if it's in a language other than English, I prefer to do my own translation because very often what's happened is the oldest versions of these fairy tales have been lost. And then what happened is in the 19th century, everyone got kind of like uptight and everything had to have a moral and everything had to be neat and tie up with all the plot threads. And I kind of like the older, wilder, messier versions of the story because you just get the sense that they're just more real. They feel more like real stories told by real people. So when I do my translations, I try to be as direct as possible. That can be tricky because sometimes there's figures of speech or words that just don't exactly translate from one language to the other, but I do my best to be as direct as possible. Like, I just did Thumbelina, and you guys are going to be getting that one really soon. And that one was wonderful to translate because I think that when H.C. Andersen was writing his stories, he knew that it was going to be for an international audience, and he was writing in the 19th century. So his stories actually don't require a lot of clarification and he avoids a lot of like confusing figures of speech. But then you get into like older German tales from the Brothers Grimm and sometimes there's these beautiful old German turns of phrase that I have to kind of think about for a minute. So yeah, so when I'm doing the older, saucier versions, I really am just going to a scan of the original document and trying to be as true as possible to that original version of the text. Because most people haven't even heard them these days. We've either gotten the Disneyfied versions or we've gotten the ones from the 19th century that got all puritanical and frankly, I think are a lot less fun.
Hey! Amanda Becker had some thoughts about the Worn Out Shoes, which is better known in English by the title The 12 Dancing Princesses, and which my mom read by the fire a few months ago. She said, I always wanted to know the backstory. Who made the trap door? Was it really a magical portal, or was there an underground kingdom deep below the regular one?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I'm going to be a little bit frustrating and refuse to answer because, I know, right?
Do I need to go get the chocolate?
No, so it's fine. So Well, let me ask you what you think. So in the 12 Dancing Princesses, this is the one where every night the girls disappear and then in the morning their shoes are all worn out from dancing and the king is like, what's going on with these girls' shoes? Although I loved your dad's response to it where he was like, if I was the king, I would just stop buying the girls' shoes. Problem solved. And I was like, that's a really good dad answer to this issue, right? Like, stop.
That's because you've married.
Yeah, well, stop buying the girls' shoes and then they won't go wear them out every night. But, yeah, so the oldest sister would knock on her bed and the trapdoor would open. And then the 12 sisters would go down into the underground kingdom to go dance with the 12 princes. And I prefer not to speculate because I don't want to interfere with your imagination. So what do you think, Chloe? Do you think that they were they magic? Were they elves? Were they cursed? Were they dead? Like, what do you think?
I think that, depends what century it is and what could be possible in that world. Like, this could be on a completely different planet, so I can't make any predictions.
Oh, so maybe it's a sci-fi work. Like, this is a wormhole and they're like going to an alien planet?
Like, I just need to know what, like, are they on our Earth or, like, planet B or something?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, but that's the cool part about the story.
Yeah.
I feel like anyone who reads that story can just sort of imagine for themselves, like, what do you think?
I feel like if it was... excuse me. I feel like if it was on our planet, like, they hired some dwarves to dig under the earth and somehow not reach magma, and then just build them a kingdom, which should probably be free of all our human troubles.
There you go. So there's your theory. I hope that satisfies you, and if it didn't, please come up with your own theory and let me know.
Yeah.
Lindy Hopper wrote in to say, of course you like children's fiction. Oh, by the way, Lindy Hopper, fantastic online name. I'm actually quite a fan of the Lindy Hop myself. But what nonfiction books do you like? I actually read quite a lot of nonfiction. I listen to a lot of audiobooks as I'm going about my day. And what I did with this one was I didn't stop to think. I just named the first three that popped into my head. And the first one was a book called Longitude. And that was a book about the scientific arms race to discover how to measure longitude. And this was huge during the age of exploration when ships were sailing all around the world. And it was very easy to figure out what latitude you were at, but it was incredibly difficult to know what longitude you were at. And this is fun because it's like kind of part spy thriller. And, you know, it has history, it has science, it has technology, it has politics, and I really enjoyed that one. So check out Longitude. Another one that I have read several times and still love is Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, which is one of those books where you realize, like, the butterfly effect, where, of course, we've all heard of Genghis Khan, but I think most people, especially in the West, have no idea how much he influenced history. So that one's a lot of fun to read. And then one book that I return to over and over again, which is just like, I know this is like the total Californian in me saying this, but this book just makes me feel so calm and motivated. And it is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which isn't really a memoir and isn't really exactly about Zen. But it is about kind of like finding focus and figuring out who you want to be. And I just really enjoy that book. I've probably read it at least a dozen times. And every time I read it, I love it more and more. So check out those three if you want some nonfiction suggestions. And Chloe, have you read any good nonfiction books recently?
Yes. I'm not sure if this is entirely nonfiction. There may be some stuff thrown in, but Roald Dahl's Flying Solo. Or Going Solo, I can't remember, but that is actually a story written by his point of view, and also, I think, Boy Tales of Childhood. Those are some of his tales that he wrote not as a child, but
yeah, I like
stuff.
I like both of those too. So Boy and I think it's Going Solo. So those are kind of the two-part autobiography, kind of written by Roald Dahl. He put in a few stretchers, but I don't really have a problem with that because, let's be honest,
you have to make books exciting.
That's kind of it, right?
You cannot have a book that's just blabber about, like, yourself. Like, you have to have other characters. You have to have, like, someone on the wrong side. Like, you have to have something that'll make readers want to read the next chapter over and over again, which is also, like, why I love The Hunger Games so much. They leave it on a cliffhanger every single time, so I'm like, I want to read more. Until Mom comes in and tells me to go to bed.
That's true. Yeah, so, I mean, if you're writing a book, you can't be like, and then today I had toast. So, even though there are a few stretchers in Boy and Going Solo, I really like them, and I think they're well worth a read. So, check those ones out.
Yep. Thank you for all of you who have been listening from the beginning, and we're looking forward to 200 more episodes with you.
It's been so fun to see how the show has grown and changed since its beginnings. This show started during lockdown when all of us were stuck at home, And I started out by doing episodes about how to homeschool kids and then eventually reset the show when life started to get more normal. That was just more generally about children's literature. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of you have seemed really interested in storytelling beyond commentary. Like lots of you enjoy the fireside fairy tales with the marshmallow toasting. Shout out to all of you who are members of the Society of Slow Toasters. But some of you are actually interested in just hearing stories without any commentary. So we came up with an idea for a separate channel that we're going to call Storytime with TQ Townsend, and it will be
just the story, no intro, no ending apart from the end. That was Thumbelina Rumpelstiltskin.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we've had fun recording sounds from nature, the waves, birds, things like that. And so what you can look forward to on this separate channel is just storytelling. And these will be things that maybe you could use to put yourself or your kids to bed, or if you just want a nice story to listen to while you're getting some other work done, without any commentary or exploration of current events, things like that. Just straight storytelling that will help you relax, unwind, and connect with the great classics from all around the world. But for now, we're going to leave it there and say thank you so much. I know I say it in every single episode. Thanks for listening. Yay! But I really, really do mean it. And it means a lot to me that so many of you have joined in and come along for the adventures. And we really look forward to sharing so many more stories with you in the future. As we always say,
thanks for listening.